Hello, my name is A. Allen, and I'm a field supervisor for Streetwise, and you are watching Streetwise live on CanTV, Channel 21. We are also streaming live on cantv.org/hotline. If you want to join the conversation, you can join the conversation by dialing 312-738-1600. And I'm joined here with my co-vendor, friend of mine, Mr. Michael Moore. I always call him money-making Michael Moore, because he's always been around. And since I've been with Streetwise, where there's money to be made, there go Michael Moore. So I want to thank you for coming on the Streetwise
Street
show
Paper
today.
is a publication
So
sold on the
much.
street by people experiencing homelessness and poverty.
The video is called Street Papers, okay? We're going to start this and then
There are more than 100
Michael Moore. Okay, Street Papers. Okay, and it goes a little bit like this. Give you an introduction of what we do, and what we do is being done all over the world. And you can watch it. You can watch this video, and you'll know a little bit about Street Papers. But Chicago Street Paper is
100 street papers around the world, sold by people just like you, in more than 35 countries and 25 languages. Together, we belong to the international network of street papers.
Street Papers are community, and they've got this whole web of relationships that are built around them. And when you put all of those vendors together, you get this huge web of human connection. I think of each newspaper as being like a stone thrown on a pond. And there are these ripples that come out of where it hits the water, and those ripples go out and they intersect with other ripples, and you don't know what that's going to cause. It's people connecting to people over the medium of this newspaper that is the product.
Getting the community together to know what's going on within the community.
We're able to build relationships, friendships, and a lot of things come about from just being out here.
And the readers, they love the paper because it helps people all over the world. It's getting bigger because of you, and you, and you, and people who buy this paper. It's getting bigger every year.
So, Mr. Moore, you saw that video. Do you consider Streetwise as like a family?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So what brought you to Streetwise, Mr. Moore?
Well, I used to, when going downtown, I would see vendors on the corners, and I admired them, and I would buy the paper at the time, you know, and so I decided to go by the base. I asked the vendor, hey, how could I get involved in selling Streetwise paper? And he said, you have to stop by the base and
The office,
and
do the orientation.
Right, exactly. And at that time, it was over on Michigan, 13th and Michigan.
Oh, that was the base. That was like the home base, right? That was the first office.
Yes.
Okay,
Sir.
then they moved to Lake. So you've been with Streetwise quite a while. How long you been with Streetwise approximately?
About a solid 20 years now.
A solid 20 years? Okay, because I do remember, I know I only been with Streetwise maybe 8 years. I remember you when Streetwise had the cart program was we were serving the food desert.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes,
we
sir.
were serving fruit and vegetables.
Yes, sir.
As a matter of fact, we worked the same cart sometime, right?
Yes, sir.
And we had fun doing that. And that's one of the main things I like about Streetwise is, if it's something you like to do, you can have fun doing it. And one of the things I like to do, or one of the things I can appreciate about Streetwise is that it's a way to make an honest living, right?
Yes, sir.
It's a way to make an honest living. And I wish we could have had you on last week, whereas me and Suzanne will be coming on later. We talked about the Chicago fight for food justice. And I know you know a little bit about it because we were serving the desert of Chicago with the food carts, bringing fresh vegetables and fresh fruit to the community.
Yes, sir.
And that was a fun activity because a lot of people got to know us through that, you know?
Right.
They got to know us, and we was like kind of serving the community with the fruit and vegetables, and they really appreciate it. I don't know what happened to the program, but nevertheless, you know, that was something that we went through together as like a family, you know.
Right.
And Streetwise is sort of like a family, staff and customers, you know, dealing with customers and staff. And for anybody that's out there that's sitting on the couch, I like for you to know that you can come to the new vendors orientation Tuesday or Thursday at 10 o'clock at 4554 North Broadway. Streetwise also have a employment program. Streetwise is a stepping stone, but if you want a traditional 9-to-5 job, we also have people there to help you. Miss Maloney will help you put together a resume. We'll help you go over to surf the internet and find out someone that can hire you. Put your resume out there to different companies. So you can use Streetwise as a stepping stone and until you get permanent employment from 9 to 5 if that's what you like. But me, myself, personally, I like being my own boss. You know, that's the good thing about Streetwise, right?
Yes, sir. Right.
Yeah, we was talking a little earlier, and you was telling me how how you used to you applied for your peddler's license,
Right.
and how you was able to sell oils and inflatables and different things like that. And I did the same thing, you know, and it was kind of expensive, you know, purchasing the peddler's license. But with Streetwise, you don't have to worry about that because we'll give you a license. We'll give you a license to sell the Streetwise magazines, okay?
Right.
And we'll start you off 15 free papers to get you started, get your wheels rolling, and we'll give you a good location. So if you're welcome to come to Streetwise Tuesday or Thursday at 10 o'clock, 4554 North Broadway, Suite 350, right off the red line on Wilson. Yeah, you're welcome to come and be a part of this, okay? Streetwise, okay, vendors orientation. And Mr. Moore, I like, where do you actually work at? You sell the papers, right?
Yes, I'm at Sheffield and Fullerton at the Whole Foods Market.
Oh, that's your location?
Yeah, that's one of them.
That's
yeah.
over by DePaul's?
Yeah, DePaul University, right.
Okay,
I'm
well,
usually there after 12 noon, though.
yeah. So we invite you to come out to support Mr. Michael Moore and his paper sales over by DePaul, especially if you're a student over by DePaul. Come out and see Mr. Michael Moore. He'll have a paper for you if you don't have a vendor, especially if you live over that way. And like I say, my name is A. Allen, and my location is Franklin and Chicago. You know, if you're over in that area, stop by and see me. I'll be right close to Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. I'll be there early in the morning from 8:30 to 9:30. You know, and I solicit your support because I enjoy making an honest living this way, you know. It provides me a way to, not only a stepping stone, but a way to support my children. It provides me a way to pay my rent, to pay my utilities, to keep food on the table, you know, and keep gas in the car, you know. So Streetwise vendors are hard-working people, and we not only in Chicago, but we in other states in the United States, and not only that, but we in places all over the world. And I'm gonna let you watch a little bit more of this video concerning street papers. What do street paper means to the readers, okay? Let's get it
I
from
work
the reader's point of
downtown,
view.
and I meet wonderful people every day that sell street papers and that connect with me, and I know that they're doing meaningful work, and I've grown to care about them and know them. It is such a great paper, and it's interesting. In our office downtown, we often point out articles to one another, and sometimes the vendors will point out if they have a piece or if they know someone that has a piece in the paper, and that's really meaningful to me. It's a fabulous publication. I feel like I have had the chance through the vendor relationships that I have to get to know people that I wouldn't have gotten to know otherwise, to hear about their struggles and also to see them in the same place every day, day after day, regardless of the weather, when it's raining, when it's cold. They are out there with their paper for me, making sure that I know about their community, and it just creates such a strong bond and strong connection.
It's something to really be proud of, because folks that may not be connected can end up being some of the folks you have the greatest relationships with.
It gives a voice to the low income and homeless. It's helped me with my self-esteem. I've met a lot of cool people here. I've just been blessed.
When I think of street papers, I think of every vendor being a hub of community connection that is capable of changing a city and capable of changing the world.
I'm a felon, a repeated felon, and I have 16 years in recovery.
A lot of jobs don't let you deal with your mental health challenges like I have. This job does.
When I was in recovery and I kept losing those jobs, I was tempted selling this street paper. I'd make enough money.
But I have a 14-year-old son, and it helps me spoil him for his birthday and his Christmases.
This paper is growing, and I'm a part of it. I'm so glad to be a part of it.
At the end of the day, it's pretty big.
The people that comes into your life, when you are here selling this paper, the people can come into your life, can change it totally.
It's a lot of change that street papers create.
It don't take a whole lot of people either. It just take one person consistently, and your life has changed.
So I really like that video because it's a lot of reality in the video, because selling street papers can change your life, because it affords you the opportunity to meet people that you normally wouldn't meet, okay? You know, because me, myself, personally, I know I wouldn't meet a doctor unless I was going had physical problems with my health, okay? This way I get a chance to meet doctors, lawyers, you know, other than going to court, you know, other than being in that position of needing one. You know, you get to socialize with doctors and lawyers and different people on different levels of life, you know, that you normally wouldn't meet, you know. Even at the office, you know, we get the chance to meet people we normally wouldn't even socialize with, but we able to socialize. So it's enhancing to a lot of people, you know, because just as well as I can learn from a doctor or a lawyer, they can learn from me. You know, and you know, we do writing for Streetwise, and I remember you being in the writers group and the current event classes, which, you know, that brings us together and makes us feel like family. Plus we have food. We sit down and break bread together at the office, you know. It's a lot of things going on. And most of all, Michael, I thank you for coming to the show today, and I want to just review some of the additions that we had in case you missed it. Streetwise, looking at the overhead, okay. All in one, that was one of the papers. If you didn't get, you can also. And then the Sacred Ground, that's one of the papers. As a matter of fact, speaking of the Sacred Grounds, that's Bronzeville. There's some things in this edition that's talking about Bronzeville. And we did something last week that we normally don't do. And this is the yearbook edition that's full of Streetwise vendors. Then we have, just to show you some of the things you may be missing, the concert guide, just to show you a few of the things that you may be missing. Okay, and of course, we had the legalization of cannabis, which became legalized in Illinois 2020, you know, and I wrote an article in that. And then we can't forget about Martin Luther King Day. You know, these are just some of the articles that we publish, and I'm grateful today because we have our editor, Susan Haney here, and she will be coming in and speaking about this edition, okay, Women for a Vote, okay? And remember, I want to thank you, Mr. Michael Moore, for coming out. Remember, we have the new vendors orientation Tuesday and Thursday at 10 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Moore, for coming.
All right, Mr. L.
Appreciate you, sir.
All right, thank you.
And now we have Susan Haney here in the studio, and she's going to talk about this edition of Streetwise, which is Women for a Vote. Women came a long ways, as Virginia Slim say. Women have came a long ways. What you think, Miss Haney?
Well, of course. Now, this is about the centennial of Votes for Women. And I suppose a lot of people think that women have always had it, white women, etc. This happened to be votes for all women, black women, white women, and it happened 100 years ago, and Illinois was essential in getting it done. Because of 3 women to start with, we had 3 of the most influential women in the country. We had Jane Addams, who founded Hull House, so she was known as a social worker. She started the whole idea that she said, our handouts, she noticed when she graduated from college and went on the grand tour of Europe, she had money, okay? That people were poorer than her. And so she wondered whether handouts were just the best way to help them. A handout?
Right.
And so she saw a model of social work in London, and that became her model of cross-culture classes meeting each other, which is essentially what Streetwise does.
Yeah, exactly.
So she became like one of the prominent women in the country because everybody listened to what she had to say. So she was behind suffrage. Then there was Frances Willard. Now, Frances Willard headed the National Women's Christian Temperance Union, and that was an organization that wanted to ban alcohol. And they called it home protection because when men drank, they either lost their jobs or they beat women.
Okay.
And so if women got the vote, they could ban alcohol.
Yeah.
So and the other thing she felt was that all of these women said the same kind of thing. Men did their thing, which was send young men to war. And women were more key towards protecting children, protecting families, and not doing that. They were more geared towards life. So they needed to get into politics to purify it. Okay?
That makes sense.
Yes.
The women are more sensitive.
Well, you need that balance.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because so this vote passed 100 years ago.
Okay.
And it was not, it took 70 years to get done. So it's interesting, we tend to think when we talk about civil rights, oh my God, it was still happening for blacks in the 60s. Well, it only got done for women in the 20s. And so it was a long, hard slog. Now, so that's what they said. It started in 1848, before the Civil War.
Okay.
And then after the Civil War, they kind of split because black men got the vote, but white women didn't. And some women were like, hey, what about us? And other women were like, hey, we'll get it sooner or later. So that took 20 years to heal. And then they finally figured out they had to go state by state and get it done in each state. And they had to work for a national amendment to the Constitution. So they had to do both. And so in Illinois, I mentioned Jane Addams, I mentioned Frances Willard. There was also Ida B. Wells. She's the one that we named the street after. She's the one that had the housing project named after her.
Okay.
She started out as an anti-lynching person in the South. And she said, all this thing about black men raping women, that's not why it happens. It happens because somehow a black person got into competition with a white person and they wanted to take him out.
Take them out of the way.
That's
Get 'em
right.
out the way.
And so she made sure that white women knew that. Now, Jane Addams and Frances Willard didn't always get that, but she kept it to them. And Frances Willard, the WCTU was a black and white organization. It had 200,000 members at the turn of the century. I mean, that's why Frances Willard was an influencer. So they wound up passing an anti-lynching resolution because Ida B. Wells pushed them.
Okay.
Anyway, she also started some suffrage clubs around 1913, which got blacks the vote. And because she did this voter education, Chicago got its first black alderman. In like 1915.
Okay.
So this is even before the Great Migration. It's the people who are already here. So those are 3 of your big people. Then there were other people. Elizabeth Harbert Boynton was a journalist. There was another woman who was Catherine Gauger McCullough was a lawyer, and she was the one who drafted the legislation. She had been a lawyer for women's rights in the years after she graduated from college. Grace Wilbur Trout was a club woman. And she did flamboyant things like get women in a suffrage parade so that people would see them on the 4th of July and people would go, oh, okay. Or they'd do a motor tour to like 16 towns within 40 miles of Chicago. And they'd get out on the street and talk about women's votes. And then the next day it would be in the front page of the paper. And so other women would be sitting there going, hey, you know what? I want to vote.
Okay.
Then in 1913, when they decided to get the vote passed, it was really interesting. She decided it had to be a quiet campaign. She said, there's no real opponents, just people who haven't been convinced yet. So she just did very, individual to individual, but she kept a card file on every legislator. And at the end, one of the legislators said, the Speaker of the House said, can you prove that this is wanted? And so she said, okay. So he went home for the weekend, back to Chicago. She flooded his house with phone calls every 15 minutes. It was one continuous ring from Saturday to Monday. And then when he got back to Springfield on Tuesday, there were telegrams and letters, thousands waiting for him. She just got it all lined up. And I didn't know this. It's not in the story. I read this later. He was engaged. And his girlfriend refused to announce the engagement until he said he would vote for women. So it passed.
Okay.
Okay.
One
I
way
mean,
of doing
it got down to the little bitty nitty gritty. Okay.
Yeah.
Little bitty nitty gritty.
Right.
So, yeah, it was just like civil rights, but I have to say this: it was white girls acting black.
Okay.
Really.
Well, let me ask you a question. Okay, votes for the women. Can you tell me how this started, or it was suggested that Illinois paved the way?
Well, it was these 6 women.
In Illinois.
It was the 6 women the 3 women who were really well known nationally, and then the other 3 who were so well known in the state. So see, Illinois passed it, and as this one gal, Grace Wilbur Trout, maybe we can show a picture of her.
Okay.
This is one of the women, Grace Wilbur Trout. Actually, I'll show all of them to you, just so you kind of have a feeling. This is Jane Addams.
There goes Jane Addams.
There's Jane Addams.
Okay.
Okay. And here's Elizabeth Boynton Harbert. She was a local journalist. And then here's Catherine McCulloch. She was a lawyer. She had been a women's rights lawyer, and she had done things like she found women didn't have the rights to their own children. If they were in trouble, if their husbands were abusive and they wanted to leave, they wouldn't be able to maybe take their children. So she did things like that. She worked on legislation for women. This is Grace Wilbur Trout, who was the club woman who did the tours and who got the legislation passed. These 2 women were kind of at odds because she thought she was too boisterous, and she thought she was too kind, too sweet and diplomatic.
Right.
But it was her legislation that she got passed. She'd had it done for 20 years, and it took her kind of finagling behind the scenes. So it took everybody in different kinds of styles to get it done. Now this is Ida B. Wells Barnett.
Okay.
And this is Frances Willard. And this is a picture of the first motor tour when Grace Wilbur Trout was lining up to take a trip downstate to talk to other women and try to convince them. So it was, and Grace Wilbur Trout mentioned in a story for the Illinois history publication that if Illinois hadn't passed it in 1913, New York wouldn't have passed votes for women in 1917. So then it wouldn't have passed in 1919. It was because Illinois passed it that New York realized they needed to get on the stick, because women's suffrage was more popular in the Midwest and the West. The Northeast and the South didn't tend to care about it. The Southern women were, it was the Southern thing, but the Southern women wanted to be ladies. They didn't want to rock the boat.
Okay.
So as a result, when it finally went through, it passed in states and nationally. And so what happens with a federal amendment to the Constitution is it has to pass 3/4 of the states. There were 48 states at the time. That meant 36 states. 7 southern states said no.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, Mississippi didn't pass it until like 1984.
Okay.
They would still be waiting if it hadn't passed nationally.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Illinois passed it just because we had all these important organizations here, and we pushed for it. And then we got it done at the state, which meant New York had to think about, well, you know what, if Illinois can do it, we want it too. We want the vote too. It's interesting. There was there was when I did the story a year ago on the 60s, and there was a Republican congressman from Illinois who was famous and finally put his weight behind civil rights. He quoted a French playwright named Victor Hugo saying, "All the armies in the world can't stop an idea whose time has come."
I heard that before.
And that's what this was. All of these women are like, "Excuse me? I deserve the right to vote. It's time."
Thank you, Suzanne Haney, for coming on the show and explaining to us the Streetwise. I would also like the vendors to know if you want to become a vendor or become a part of Streetwise, you're welcome to come to orientation Tuesday or Thursday at 10 o'clock. Tuesday or Thursday at 10 o'clock. Streetwise, 4554 North Broadway. It's right off the red line. You get off on Wilson and come right around the corner to 4554 Broadway. And we
Third floor.
Third floor, Suite 350. I want to thank both of my guests, Michael Moore and Miss Susan Haney, for coming on the show and explaining to us about the new magazine. If you don't have the new magazine, find you a vendor and come out and get the Votes for Women. A lot of women want to know about how women's suffrage got started. And, Illinois paved the way, as Miss Haney so eloquently explained. Thank you, Miss Haney, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
And we want to thank our audience for tuning in. And we'll be back next week, same time, same station. Thank you so much. Streetwise. Keep Streetwise alive.